So everybody has really heard the horror stories where you hire a bad contractor, he tears your kitchen apart, talks you into handing him $40,000, and then he's gone. He did a little bit of work for you, he did the demo work for you, and then he's left. He effectively ghosts you, and he's stolen your money. And now you end up with a house that's torn apart, and he's been paid for a lot of work that he hasn't actually done. So that's really what fund control prevents.
Welcome to The Edge for Tomorrow, the podcast where founders and leaders in fintech and financial services reveal their strategies for success, growth, and staying ahead. I'm Tracy, CEO of Windsor Edge, and my job is simple, helping businesses grow faster and smarter. Let's jump into today's episode. Very excited to introduce our guest, Marcus Carter. Marcus, thanks so much for being here.
When you do construction lending, you need to control the funds. You need to control how you disperse money for a construction project. You either do it yourself as a lender, or you hire a third party to manage that disbursement process and manage that fund control process. And I had hired a local company here in San Diego called Mesa Lumber Fund Control. They were a lumber company that was 100 years old. In 2007, I was still doing quite a bit of business with them, and they were going to shut their doors. They were literally shutting down their fund control business. And so I kind of have an entrepreneurial spirit. I like doing things that not a lot of other companies are doing and not a lot of other people are doing. Fund control is very much a niche business. It's a super important risk mitigation tool for construction and construction lending specifically. And I sort of made the decision to start a fund control company back then when they were exiting. I thought, wow, this is a niche business. And I saw the need for it in the lending space. We started the La Mesa Fund Control and Escrow back then in 2007. We've been growing it ever since. So
excellent.
yeah.
And you mentioned that you love finding unique niches that other people aren't working in. Where did you get that from or first notice that?
Oh gosh. When I, growing up, it was heavily influenced by my dad and both my grandfathers. All three of them, they were self-employed. They worked in various businesses and were entrepreneurial in their own spirits. So I probably inherited that somewhere along the way and decided that I wanted to work for myself. But I've always gravitated to things that are different and nuanced, and you don't have as much competition, but where you can carve out a nice niche. So the fund control space was super interesting because there's a heavy need for it. And there's a real need from a lending standpoint. Lenders need this service. Consumers need this service, but it's a difficult business to market directly to consumer direct because the construction markets are so vast. So it's difficult to go consumer direct, but primarily we focus on businesses that need our services.
I'd love to break it down even more. So from lender to the project, what is the actual service?
Sure. So everybody has really heard the horror stories of somebody hiring a bad contractor, right? Where you hire a bad contractor, he tears your kitchen apart, talks you into handing him $40,000, and then he's gone. And so you've handed this guy $40,000 or $50,000, and he did a little bit of work for you, he did the demo work for you, and then he's left. He effectively ghosts you, if you will. And he's stolen your money. And now you end up with a house that's torn apart, and he's effectively been paid for a lot of work that he hasn't actually done. So that's really what fund control prevents. At the end of the day, lenders have known that they've needed a mechanism in place to prevent contractors from being paid for work that hasn't been performed. And that's literally what fund control does. What we do is we are the eyes and the ears for the owner or for the lender, if you will, on that construction project. So for instance, let's say a construction loan starts, contractor goes out there and starts doing the work. Let's assume he's going to build a house, going to grade the pad. He's going to build the foundation. And in that foundation, he's put in some rough plumbing and some rebar, and maybe he started his framing. And now he's ready for his first payment. So he's going to submit what's called a draw request. He's asking to draw money out of the project to get paid for the work that he's performed. So we go out, we verify all the paperwork that he's asking to be paid for. We collect the lien waivers, we collect the invoices, we collect all the backup documentation, we balance the budget, And then we go out there and do a site inspection to make sure that that work has actually been performed. And once we have the completed package and we've done the site inspection, then we can give the owner or a lender a recommendation package that says either, hey, you're good to fund that transaction or you're not. We might recommend cutting some of that funding back. We might say, hey, he's asking for 100% of the foundation budget, but the reality is he's only done about 75% of the work. So let's cut that back. Let's not pay him for work that he hasn't actually performed. It really creates transparency, visibility, and a checks and balance system for dispersing money for any type of construction project. That's really what fund control does.
What are the problems that might happen if you're not there?
So, the biggest problem is that first example that I gave you is that you're dispersing money for work that hasn't been performed. A contractor says, hey, I need $150,000 and I did the grading and I built the foundation, did the rebar work, and I did all the underground work. I need $150,000. Well, if you don't check it and you just write the guy the check and pay him the money, my goodness, and he walks, you're out $150,000.
And the lender will trust them at their word?
Well, it's interesting. Sometimes they do. And sometimes it's not that obvious. If you don't have a skilled eye and you don't really know percentages of work complete, if you haven't looked at hundreds and hundreds and thousands of construction sites to know what's 20% complete, what's 50% complete, what's 75% complete, then it's very difficult to discern what those percentages should be. A contractor may say, hey, I need 50%, but he's only at 25%. To an unskilled eye, you may say, yeah, he's about there. I think he's there. Well, and he may not be even close to that number.
Yeah, I'm thinking of you come in, me walking in and I'm like, yeah, I see a foundation.
Sure.
It's much more nuanced than that, than just saying, is there a house built or isn't there a house built?
Absolutely. And when you start getting into framing and rough electrical and roof material and those percentages, you really have to have a trained eye and somebody who understands what those percentages look like. Then you're comparing the budget to what he's drawing compared to what's been done on this. Consumers absolutely need this service. The vast majority of consumers don't know that it's available to them.
I wish I met you before my sister redid her whole house.
Yeah, for sure. It's an important piece to construction.
Well, now I'll know to recommend you. I know you've had some really fantastic successes and you're growing.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about some of them.
Yeah. I think the things that are the most pleasing and let us know that we're doing a good job, you've got a completed project, the homeowners are moving into it, or the developers signing off on his certificate of occupancy, and he's got a 15-unit apartment complex and it's completed, and now he's getting ready to lease it out. And those checks and balances were in place, and you've got a project that's completed and free of liens. So lots of really good success stories. Some of the successes come during construction when you're catching contractors maybe asking to be overpaid, and you're cutting those things back, and you're preventing a project from getting into an area where they may run into trouble. So, yeah, there's lots of things that contractors will do to get paid for work they haven't performed.
Yeah, I feel like it's a known kind of joke, right?
Yeah. Well, they're people.
Hopefully.
They're people. They're people. They're no different than you and me. And, just because they're doing a job doesn't mean that they don't have, they might have financial difficulty somewhere else that you don't know about. And your job may be a way for them to get some cash. So, that's horrible for you, but sometimes that's how they see it. So.
Yeah. Isn't it every business's job to get the cash as soon as possible?
Sure. And if a contractor can be paid up front for work, then he's excited about it. Great.
Absolutely.
Can be disastrous for a homeowner or for a property owner. So
behind the scenes, what are some challenges of growing your business?
So we do business on a national basis for hundreds of different types of lenders, from finance companies to banks, private money lenders to insurance companies, sureties, municipalities. So they're all different. They all have slightly different requirements. They all have different levels of experience. We do a lot of hand-holding. We do a lot of education. We do a lot of walking clients through what expectations are, setting expectations. And then you have the contractor side. All the contractors are different with all different levels of sophistication. Some of them are old school. They're writing their invoices on a napkin and they send it in. Others are very sophisticated. They have robust accounting systems. And so we deal with it all. We see it all.
And what do you see in your industry? And I guess when I say your industry, really a lot of industries that you're supporting
Sure.
because the developments you're working on are
Yeah.
impacted on a macro scale. So the industries that, you're keeping track
Right.
of to make sure your business is in the right place. What are you seeing for 2025?
I think one of the probably biggest question marks and probably areas of potential risk is this tariff war with China that we're going into. And that could potentially have an impact not only on pricing, but also on supply chain issues. And, for construction projects, if you have a 150 unit apartment complex you're going to be building over the next 24 months, and you need 124 HVAC units, or you need 100, and you need cabling or wiring that's coming from overseas, or you need certain materials that may be coming from someplace that's manufactured overseas, that China specifically, that may not make it. That really could impact your ability to complete that project, or the time frame, or the cost structure you may be accounting on for that project. So what we're advising people really is to take that into consideration when you're looking at your budgets, when you're analyzing your project up front, when you're doing your pre-construction reviews and you're looking at timing, where those materials are coming from, and looking at your cost estimates. Building in an extra contingency for that is crucial. That's probably the biggest risk that I see right now on the forefront.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you have any big goals for this year?
Gosh. Um, well, we have some internal growth models that we want to hit in some strides, gaining traction. We're rolling out our own software, which has been a huge lift. We've worked on it for the last year and a half. So we're really excited to get into the software, start using it and rolling out for our clients. That's a big one for us. The technology that we're rolling out is going to not only allow us to scale, but create significant efficiencies within our business. We're really excited about that. Technology into this space over the next year is going to be pretty substantial. So we're excited to embrace that. We're leading into it. It just means faster, more accurate, quicker, easier draws. So, yeah.
Well, that ties into my kind of last big question is how do you feel about AI?
Oh gosh, it's scary, but it's also exciting. I think we're already using it to a certain degree. We're actually scanning all of our documents that we look at currently, looking for duplication, looking for fraud. So we're leaning into it. Technology out there right now that we are looking at will absolutely help us process draws more efficiently, more accurately, with speed. I'm excited about where it's going to take us. From outside of our industry, AI, it's a little scary, but we'll see. Everything always changes. I think you have to embrace it, use the best aspects of it, and we'll see where it takes us.
And to wrap it up, do you have any final thoughts or pieces of advice for other leaders that you've learned through your experience and your growth?
Yeah, I think stay in your lane. Stay in your lane, do what you know best, and work at your craft. Get better and better at it. That's one thing that's really helped us as we've continued to fine tune our process, best practices. And we find ourselves giving a lot of advice on best practices when it comes to lenders, or even experienced lenders that are in the space. And we can provide a kind of a resource for the best ways to handle situations. So that should be my advice. Lean into best practices, whatever your industry is.